Welcome to the Mayhem. Well, Tom always looks down like this. Welcome to the Mayhem Performance Coaching Podcast, episode number
17.
I think we're at like 8 or 9 at this point, something like that. Today we have special guests. I will not try to do the intro like Dom does. He always finds something so unique. But one of my best friends, Connor Custodio, with us, Mayhem Performance Coaching, his newest coach, just started officially with us 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Ish. Something two weeks ago-ish was his official hire date. So we're going to be chatting with Connor, having him tell us his story, a little bit of his background, how he got where he is right now. And then we'll let him jump into some things that he's passionate about when it comes to coaching. I think that's one of the fun parts of having a growing staff is that we all have a niche, right? Like, or I don't even know if I'd call it a niche, more just a passion, right? Like we all have things that we're more passionate about than others, and Connor's got his, so we're going to talk to him about what that is, and we'll go from there.
Cool.
Welcome, Connor.
Thank you.
And we also have Jake Knobchef with us as well.
I'll be throwing in
Interceding.
comments from the peanut gallery over here from time to time.
Throwing some jabs in.
Where should I start? Just like start with like my story or like coaching story?
Well, as usual, we
I can just grill you because I don't know you that
that's
well.
fine.
So
Yeah,
why
that's
don't I
fine.
just
Yeah.
All right. So first off, tell everyone just where you're from,
Okay.
where you live, just a little bit about you. Like, are you married? Do you have kids? All
Let's
that
do
kind
it.
of stuff.
Okay, so originally from Bermuda,
Okay.
which I think you knew that, right?
I did know that.
Okay,
yes.
yeah. So that's why I spent the majority of my childhood.
for those of us who don't know our geography that well, which is
Everyone
Bermuda is
listen to
pretty.
nobody. Every time everybody thinks it's the Bermuda Triangle.
That's what I was going to say. Most of us think that. Where is Bermuda?
Right off the coast of the Carolinas. So if you take, a plane, goes straight out to the east of South Carolina, it's right in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean.
Do you know how many miles
It's
it is? Like
About
from,
1,200, 1,500 from South Carolina.
and then what about Europe?
Oh, man, probably like another 2,500, I think.
Oh, so it's like
Yeah, it's
almost
closer.
legit. Okay.
Yeah, it's closer to the States by far. Yeah. So, anyway, that's where I grew up. And then I originally,
Not an American citizen, though.
I'm a dual citizen.
Oh, that's right. Explain.
Yeah. Fast forward. So my mom is born and raised in America. My dad's born and raised in Bermuda. I was actually born in Lakeland. I don't know if you knew that.
I think you.
But I moved to Bermuda when I was 4.
With your obviously.
With my parents.
Right.
Yeah.
Why did your parents end up going there? Why did they go to Bermuda?
Yeah, great question.
Have you seen
So,
Bermuda?
yeah, I know, I've
Jake?
seen
Right,
Bermuda.
that's what I
Well, yeah, my dad's from there. I know one of the main reasons is the education system over there is like second to none
Really?
because we're owned by the UK. So
Okay.
a lot of it's UK inspired.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I always say this. The class I would have graduated with, maybe like 20, 30 people. They went to Yale, Harvard, they're doctors now, and I'm 28. So it's like,
Wow.
it's pretty insane.
And you're a fitness coach.
I'm a fitness coach, yeah.
All right, now, hang on. I've got to kind of hijack this because,
Yeah.
spoiler, this is for what I'm actually going to talk about Sunday morning. But did your parents have to take a citizenship test, or did you take a citizenship test to get dual citizenship?
I know my mom did.
Well, you were born here, right? So you're automatic.
Yeah, I was born here, so I'm good. But
so you've got, okay, all right. But your parents, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know the history behind that, but
Have you ever looked at the citizenship test? I know you would ace it, probably.
I actually have. It's not easy.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
But two of the all right, the Federalist Papers. Do
Yes.
you know any of the authors of the Federalist Papers?
Yeah, I do.
You do.
You want
Okay.
me to say it right now? Alexander Hamilton, James Madison.
All right.
Yeah.
One of the other ones was, what are one of the 2 longest rivers in the United States?
Mississippi,
Yeah, Mississippi. I think the other one was,
the St. John's.
I can't remember.
See,
Yeah.
how do you-
Anyways, I was researching that, and
Okay,
I came across
interesting.
those questions. I was like,
I
I
would fail.
Yeah.
So anyway, I forget our train of thought. So I'm from Bermuda, and then I eventually. So since I was from here, the goal growing up was to try to get back to the States because I had a passion to play basketball in college. Being from Bermuda, since it's owned by the UK, the main sports are rugby. They call it football, but it's soccer, which it's what I call it as well. Track and field, and I would say cricket is another big sport. So basketball is just not big at all. So I actually grew up playing like men's leagues when I was like 10 years old, which was crazy. So the goal again was to try to get back to the States to just get a scholarship somehow. And this is where my story kind of takes a big like turn. So my parents got divorced when I was about 12. And my mom was diagnosed with bipolar, and my dad, he's kind of kind of like a functioning alcoholic, I would say. That's the best way of describing it. But at the time, I didn't know that. And I think he did a good job of, like, hiding that from all of us. But anyway, so I was around 8 years old when my parents split up. So from 8 to 12, I was with my dad. And I got really good at basketball when I was around, like, that teenage years. So my only opportunity was to go to the States would be with my mom because she lived there. Once they split up, she went back to the States. So at that time, I was like, okay, I really don't want to go and live with her because it felt like it was unsafe for me to do that because of so many traumatic things that, like, happened in my story up until that point. But it was my only opportunity. I was like, I really want to go to college. Nobody in my family has gone to college. We can't afford college. I was just like, I have to do this, right? And my identity was so wrapped up into it at that point. And I had a mentor at a time too. He was kind of like my basketball trainer, and he was from the States, but he was living in Bermuda. He was like, bro, you got to go to the States. I don't think he fully knew my situation, or I don't think he might have encouraged it. But I go out to Florida for my freshman year, and Lakeland, I went to George Jenkins for maybe a semester, and it was terrible. Because my at-home life was just, it felt so unsafe.
This is Lakeland, Florida.
Florida. So
God's country.
Yeah, God's country. So I went to George Jenkins. I would say that, like, you know, obviously big life turn for me because being in Bermuda, like, all of our schools are so small. And then going to George Jenkins, I was like, what the heck is this?
Big public high school.
Yeah. And at the time, like, I had a pretty, like, thick Bermuda accent, so it's like everyone's like, where the frick is this kid from? Like, he's a white kid and he's from Bermuda.
I didn't know you had.
Oh yeah. It was a whole, like, life crisis moment.
What does a
Bermudian sound like?
That's good.
Accent.
Yeah. Oh man, should I do it right now?
Can you please do it?
Go please.
Oh man. I mean, this is like, I would say this is like the stereotypical Bermudian accent. So again, it's like taking an island accent and
with like a UK
twist, but it's really weird. Nobody talks like a Bermudian. So if you hear a Bermudian talk, you're like, what the heck's going on? So this is like the classic thing we'll say. So it's like, if you're going to go to town and actually tell me a sentence to say and I'll say it. That's the best way to do it.
Oh man, you can't put me on the spot.
Yeah,
like
just
that.
like anything.
I need to go to the grocery store and pick up some milk.
Okay, yeah.
Wow. Much.
Yeah, so I'm like,
pretty easy.
I'm going to butcher this, but it's like, yeah. Yeah, but I'm going down to town to get some milk, and I'm going to go hit up Ace Girl and see what she's saying.
It's like Jamaican.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It is like an island accent. Like, people actually, that's a normal.
That's normal. Like, that's like, yeah.
I'm taking a trip to Bermuda. I'm
Campbell
sold.
actually knows some Bermudian. If Campbell's in here, he knows some Bermudian. Anyway, so when I got to Georgia, it was just like this. It was just holy smokes. But I was really missing my dad because my dad and I had a really close relationship. So, like, every night, like, I was crying myself to sleep because my mom was not safe for me. Like, I had 2 older sisters, but they were just off, like, doing their own thing. So it was just like a lot of, like, anxiety and fear, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And I felt like I was a pretty, like, outgoing guy. So for me to, like, have to mask that all the time, it was tough. So anyway, I was just like, there's no way I can stay here. So I went back to Bermuda, finished out my freshman year, loved it, but I was just like, man, I got to go back there. Like, I got to get back to the States somehow. And at the time, I was, like, trying to think about boarding schools that I could go to, but of course we couldn't afford them. I tried to go to IMG, which is in Bradenton. Got a scholarship, but it's a $60,000 school, and I got a $30,000 scholarship. So I'm just like, okay, still so expensive. Anyway, so I said, you know what? I'm a year older now. I think I was 14, 15. So I'm going to try to do this again. I'm going to go out, and I think I can, like, man up and be with my mom and try to, like, work through all the chaos of, like, you know, when she goes manic or whatever the case is. So I did that. I went to LCS. I don't think you know. I
did not know this.
Yeah.
Context. Connor and I
have known each other.
You're going back. Yeah, just to, I guess, jump forward and then come back.
Right.
Connor and I have known each other for
6 years.
6 years now.
Yeah.
I coached Connor for a few years, which you can get into that story a little bit, and then we worked together before me coming to Mayhem.
Yep.
So we'll come back to that, but
we'll get to that point.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff about Connor I don't know.
Yeah. I went to LCS, another school in Lakeland, and
is that like a big school? Like, is it
private Christian school?
Okay.
So
that was the last school I taught at.
Yeah, he taught at that school.
Okay.
Yeah. Not when I was there though, which I would have been crazy.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I went to that school, and I actually loved it because this was the school my sisters went to before we moved back to Bermuda. So we had a lot of connections there with my family. So I felt good going there. Like I knew a lot of people. And really the year was going good. At home life was still the same. Like I was angry, I was frustrated, I was missing home. Didn't feel safe with my mom, and there's just like a lot of behind the scenes stuff happening. And basically February came around, so I almost made it through a whole semester in a little bit. And I was at Kelly Rec, you know Kelly Rec, right? And I think that morning, my mom and I probably got in a fight based off of like, hey, like I don't want you to go to the gym after school or something like that. And again, at that time, like basketball was everything to me, and like that was like the way of my body regulating after like a stressful day at school or after being at home. So I think she might have said something like, hey, you can't go to the, I'm not going to take you to the gym after school. So I was like, okay, cool, I'll find a ride. So that's what I did. After school, I found a ride. And somehow, some way, she found out about that. And after I was done, she came to Kelly Rec with all of my bags, literally packed, like my suitcase, all of my clothes, and said, like, you're on your own. And this is like my sophomore year of high school, bro. And I'm like, which again, like you take this into context, like there was a lot of manic things she did. So it wasn't like, what the heck's going on? But I was still super appalled that she would do that. And again, for me, I didn't, it wasn't like I was hanging around the wrong crowd. I wasn't doing things I shouldn't be doing. Like I was going to school and then going to the gym every day. That was on the repeat.
So she basically shipped you back to Bermuda.
Yeah. Which is crazy, bro, but which is nuts because at the time, she had all my passports and stuff, and she wouldn't give them to me. So I was actually trapped here in the States. I couldn't go back home to my dad. So at the time, my dad was in a relationship with this woman that lived in Florida. She came and picked me up, and I had to stay with her for, I think another 2-3 months just because that's how long it took me to get a new passport.
Holy cow.
Yeah, bro. Yeah. So, and that woman ended up becoming my stepmom, which she was a huge blessing in disguise. But anyway, like I could not finish out that year properly. Like it was just terrible. I would go into school, I'd be in class, and I'd get into the hallway, and I would see somebody that like knew my dad, and I'd just start bawling my eyes out. And like nobody knew anything about me, so like they're thinking like, what's going on? I would have to make up stories like, yeah, my grandma's like dying or something. It's like, what do you say? Like my mom just kicked me out of the house, and like it was so tough. So anyway, I finally got back to Bermuda, finished out that summer, was trying to do virtual school to try to like set me up for my junior year because I basically dropped out like mid-March. And my dad, my now stepmom, and I were like, okay, we all need a fresh start. Again, now this is like 1, 2, 3, 4 high schools I've already been to technically, right, going back and forth. So we made a decision to go to South Carolina, which the whole reason for that was my grandparents in Bermuda had a home there in Myrtle Beach that we could just go and visit. So we're like, hey, let's go move up there. That's what we did.
Live in Bermuda, home in Myrtle Beach.
Yeah, right.
Not bad.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's what we did, and it was honestly great. But at that time, like my life for the first time was settling down. So even that summer in Bermuda, like I was for the first time starting to experience anxiety, because it makes sense, right? My life is just going chaotic the entire time. As soon as it settled down, I just started to panic so much, and again, it was so foreign to me because I was somebody who was so like I loved hanging around friends. I loved being, the class clown or whatever the case might be. So like the anxiety closed me off to that so much. I was so confused. I mean, it was random things. Like I couldn't go to Walmart at night because the lights like made me so anxious. I felt like I was going to pass out. It was the weirdest thing.
Walmart makes a lot of people anxious.
I guess so. That's
Don't feel
true.
bad.
Yeah.
You're not alone.
Yeah. So anyway, flash forward, we get to South Carolina. I'm now at Myrtle Beach High School, which is a huge high school, even bigger than George Jenkins. It was like 5,000 people, something like that. Maybe not that big, but it was huge. And I was going to say huge again. Like, I don't want to get political.
Huge.
Tori says I sound like him every time I say that now because I've been copying it. Anyway.
Is Trump Bermudian?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're safe.
He's been there, though.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like back in the day.
Vacation?
Vacation, yeah. Anyway, so we get to South Carolina, and everything was going good. Basketball was going good, and I had a good setup. And now, flash forward to again like that February mark, my stepmom's mom, so my step grandma, was dying of cancer, and we had to move back to Florida. We had to pick up everything we just started and move back to Florida, which I was just like, this is ridiculous. Like, so many different transitions. I was just like, this sucks. And all of it, for the most part, was out of my control up until that point. So we get back to Florida, and we had to make a decision of like, what the heck am I going to do for schooling? And all of what I was doing was helping my grades to like get me back into the right grade. So if I went into another school, I would have to like overload myself. And I was like, I'm not going to do that. Let's like whatever school I go to, I'll be willing to go back a grade, which I don't even know if you know that. So I had to go back into my junior year, and I chose a school that I told my parents. I was like, listen, I want to go to this school, and I want to graduate from there, like no matter what happens. And I just picked a random school that I was playing travel ball with one of the students there, and he was like, hey, you should come in like to the school, and we could have like 2 seasons together. And I was like, sure. And that's what I did. So I went to the school, and it was great, man. Like my junior year was like the first smooth year. I didn't have anything like crazy happen. I started to get scholarships for college, and I was like, okay, perfect. This is exactly what I thought my life would do. And senior year comes around, super excited to go back to school, made so many good friends. 2 months in, we had like a group of like 6 guys we always hung out with. One of those dudes passed away randomly on a weekend because he had bacterial meningitis. So he comes in on a school on a Friday. We were like like you have those news things in the morning in high school. Mm-hmm. Like we led that. So like it was me and him leading it, just like a setup just like this. He comes into school on Friday. He's like, man, I feel terrible. I feel super sick. And we found out Sunday like he passed away. Wow. So I'm just like, at that point, I'm just like really mad at God. I'm like, you couldn't give me a break. Like it was almost like a tease. It's like every year at the same time something crazy would happen, and then it's like I had this whole like fantasy year of like, yeah, this is amazing, and then that happens, and I was just like, what the heck, man? And then
what school were you at for my
Santa Fe?
Okay,
Santa Fe,
right.
yeah.
Okay,
and that's all my connections with Santa Fe, yeah. So that happened, and then I also got a new basketball coach that year, and I love my junior year basketball coach, but he just was getting older, didn't feel like he was fit enough to coach. So this new guy comes in, and he was basically like, hey, I want to come over to your house, like meet your parents, all of these things, like, and really help me to get where I want to be. And 4 games in, I go up for a layup, I get fouled, and I like turn around to our bench. I'm like, let's freaking go. Like I was so hyped. And one of my teammates gets onto the court. He takes him by like the jersey and throws him against the wall. And the kid like bangs his head. And like, history on this coach who's super negative. Like I played for so many different coaches and different personalities, but this dude was like over the top, almost like Bobby Knight, right? If you know who Bob Knight is, like throwing chairs and yeah. So the next day in practice, again, this is my senior year, all of this is happening. And I also had an appeal to play. That's another big thing because of all the transitions that I made. I wasn't even eligible to play because it looked like I was having a 5th year. So that was a whole nother thing. I could only play regular season games. So because of that, I had 15 games to play. And during practice, after that game, he looks at all of us and he's like, what's going on? Like, all of you guys look dead. Like, you're not wanting to try at all. And nobody says anything. And he looks at me. He's like, Connor, you're our captain. Like, tell us what's going on. I was like, to be honest, like, what you did yesterday, coach, like, to our teammate, like, we just don't think that was, like, called for. And you never apologized for it. The parents came to you. You never said anything to them. And ever since that day, he didn't play me. He didn't start me. And it was like a nightmare. And I found out, like, after the fact that, like, he called certain colleges that were recruiting me and told them, like, you don't want to recruit this kid anymore. So I'm just like, what the heck? And again, like, I feel like I was doing the right thing here. And luckily, I don't know if you remember Jeremy Grammer at SEU, but he was the assistant coach. And my pastor had let him in on the whole situation. My pastor knew everything that was happening in my life. And he told Jeremy, it's like, listen, this kid is probably one of the best players in Polk County. And he's not going to start tomorrow night when you go watch him play Victory. But just go and watch him play and, talk to him after. So I get into the game, and I go down, and I hit, like, 2 back-to-back threes. And at that time, I didn't have any scholarships. I had all interest up at that point, but they were all gone now because of that situation. So I'm like, so nervous going into this game. Like, this is probably my only shot to play in college basketball. So I go into the game. I hit 2 back-to-back threes, right? And I'm like, oh, let's freaking go. I'm about to go off. He pulls me out of the game. And I'm like on the bench. I'm just like, what the heck, man? And I remember praying to God. I'm like, God, just get me back in the game, please. Somehow, some way. I end up getting back in the game. I end up having like 28 points. I talked to Jeremy after the game, and he offers me like a spot right then. But yeah, that was like my high school career. It was nuts. Like 5 different high schools in 4 years, so many different transitions. And then that takes me to getting to Southeastern, and that was like the best time of my life, honestly. I mean, that's really where I developed my relationship with Jesus the most. I got to connect with so many different professors, because at first I was majoring in youth ministry, so I had a lot of ministry classes I was taking, and I switched my major to exercise science, and then switched it back to sports management, which again kind of goes into my story. Like I was very indecisive, just because I was always afraid of making the wrong decision, right? And I think that, which I want to get into, is like plays a lot into who I am and what I kind of went through. But yeah, and then basketball quickly became something that wasn't fulfilling me anymore. I quickly realized that. I realized that I had wrapped up my identity fully into basketball, because I got to college and I was just like, okay, now what? Like, now I'm not the best player anymore. There's a bunch of really good players. I was the only freshman on the team, playing with juniors and seniors that were like, NAIA, bro, like there's 25, 26-year-olds sometimes coming back to do their masters.
I think we had like a 27-year-old.
Yeah, it was 26,
crazy. 27
yeah,
on our football team.
Some of our dudes were playing pro already, came back to like get education. I'm like, yeah, scrawny little white kid, like not going to play. So
now Southeastern University in Florida, like they had a legit
basketball
team. The national championship.
Yeah, we got to the final. Right? We won our conference and got to the Final Four.
Yeah, they're a great team.
Yeah. Especially that year. It was like my freshman year.
Not just in the NAIA, but they were beating.
Oh yeah. Like we beat Florida Southern that year, and Florida Southern ended up winning the Division II national championship.
Yeah.
So yeah, we had.
I think
a pretty
you guys
good
even
team.
played Florida State.
We did play Florida State. My first ever college game was at Florida State. And I will never forget that game. I'm bringing down the ball, and I felt like I was a Looney Tune playing against the Monstars. I had a 7'1" Jonathan Isaac guarding me, who plays in the NBA now. And I'm just like, bro, what is going on? So it was sick, though. That was probably, such a good
How many
memory.
points did you drop in that game?
I attempted 2 shots. I made none.
That's all right.
Yeah, I had a floater over one of the 7-footers and almost made it. I was like, the fact that I just got it over him was pretty.
Yeah, I'll take it.
Yeah. So. I think I got an assist. That was about it. But, so that was my kind of conundrum after that. It was like, okay, like, who am I outside of basketball? Never really even dived into that. And kind of as I was figuring that out, I got connected with this pastor I was talking about, and he was the guy who got me connected with Southeastern in the first part. I saw him at the YMCA. He would come and rebound for me, never told me he was a pastor. And then once I knew he was, I was like, I got to go to your church, man. And so eventually when I went back home to Bermuda in between like my freshman and sophomore year, and I volunteered at a camp that I grew up going to as a counselor. And that whole summer I didn't touch a basketball. And I was the happiest I've ever been. I was like, okay, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. I want to do ministry, or I want to be in this realm of like helping other people. So I go back to Southeastern and I make the decision, like, okay, I want to get involved in the church. I want to start like helping out. So I reached out to my pastor, and I told him this, and he was like, great, like I'll take you underneath my wing, like I'll teach you like ins and outs of ministry. And then I got into a relationship, and then that's when I started to wrap up my identity into that. And that was like a whole like spiraled out of control. Like, I wanted that to be the center of my life, and subconsciously I didn't mean to do it. But that pulled me out of everything. I mean, I was involved in the church. I didn't want to do it anymore. She didn't think that was going to be something that down the road was going to support us if I went into ministry. And I'm just like, okay, like I'll do whatever would keep the relationship together. And every time we would break up, because it was such a toxic relationship, I would go back to my pastor and I'd be like, hey, I know I'm dumb. Like, I know I'm not supposed to be in this relationship. Can I like start to get involved in the church? And every single time he's like, yes, of course. And it came to the last times. Now I'm like a junior in college, and we broke up for the last time. And I went to a like church conference because my buddy told me to, because we were supposed to go together like with my ex-girlfriend. He's like, just go by yourself. Like, just go by yourself in faith. Like, you need to go. And I'm like, okay, whatever. So I go all the way down. It's like in South Florida. Like, I'm driving there, and I'm thinking like something life-changing is going to happen. Like, I'm going to meet the love of my life. Like, I'm going to get a job opportunity. The message is going to do something crazy, and nothing happened. Like, I go to the church conference, and I get back in my car. I'm just like, God, like, what the heck? Like, what am I supposed to do now? Like, I just don't know what to do with my life. Like, I'm not plugged into really any church at the time. And I put on worship music and just start bawling my eyes out. And, like, that was probably the most significant time in my life that I felt like God's presence and his voice. And basically he was like, Connor, like, you know where you need to be. Like, you need to be involved at your church. And I'm like, no, like, I'm not going to reach out to Coy for the third time and tell him, like, I messed up again. Like, I want to be, involved in your church. I want you to take me underneath your wing. And he's like, no, you're not going to text him again. You're going to show up on Saturday night, because we had a Saturday night service as well. And you're going to tell him everything I'm telling you now. And he's going to take you underneath his wing. He's going to teach you the ins and outs of ministry and all of this. Like, he was basically unveiling like this plan. That's what I did, bro. Like, I went and talked to him. I bawled my eyes out to my pastor. And ever since then, like, that decision has transformed my life. I met my wife at our church. I learned all the ins and outs of ministry and how that worked, and I got to lead like a young adults ministry. I technically like made the connection through you, because Campbell was like doing stuff with our church just at an event. So it was just like, it was so crazy, man. That one moment that has led to like now has been like astronomical. So yeah, we can maybe go into details now.
We didn't even have to ask questions.
No, that was good.
Yeah.
So that guy, how did you meet Foster?
Yeah. So I'm starting my master's now at Southeastern in divinity, and Campbell was coming in as a freshman. And at the time,
Campbell's a client of mine.
Yeah, OG client. Yeah. And at the time, like, Campbell was snatching 300 pounds. I mean, he was one of the best athletes like locally. And he brought like a Vital Fitness workout to our school, like to like advertise for Vital. It was him and Bry. You remember Bry?
Yeah, oh yeah.
And anyway, we do this workout together, and me and my buddy Colin did it, and we went against them. I had no expertise in CrossFit. Like, I had no idea even what it was about. I was kind of like anti-CrossFit. I thought it was so dumb. And anyway, we ended up beating them, and I'm just like, this dude is like not that fit, bro. Like, I just crushed them. Again, I ran track and I played basketball, so I was in pretty good shape, but we did body weight. It was push-ups and like med ball cleans and then a run back and down.
This is at Southeastern.
At Southeastern.
Right? Yeah, I remember that. Okay.
Yeah.
So Vital Fitness is the gym that I own in Florida.
Yeah.
And we put together a workout for
Southeastern kids.
The local college, at Southeastern University in Lakeland. So
yeah. And it was a blast. And so I left that day, and I was talking to my buddy Colin. I was like, bro, like, I feel like I should do CrossFit. Like, I'm done playing basketball now. I'm in my master's. I still wanted to do something competitive. So the first thing I do is like I hit up Campbell, and I'm like, hey, bro, like, who coaches you? And he's like, this guy, Jake Foster. And I'm like, sick. Like, send me his contact information. And I think I texted you that day. We hopped on a call maybe the next day.
I honestly don't even fully remember.
Yeah, I'd have to go back. Yeah, it was a long time ago, bro.
Yeah.
Like, literally 5-6 years ago.
That's kind of what I was saying on mine, is that's kind of how it happened for me. That's how growth happened. It was just these random...
Organic.
Yeah, just organically. Yeah. So, which is the
mouth.
best. Yeah. Referrals, right?
Yeah. So, yeah, I hit you up, and I remember I was like, I've got to go back to the text, bro, because it's so funny. Because I think I was like, I can't afford it. And then I don't know if you finagled the price, but you're like, no, I meant this price. And I'm like, okay, I can't afford it. I don't remember.
I was pulling a fast one on
I
that.
I don't know. But we quickly hit it off.
Or I just Jedi mind. Don't worry about
that. Don't worry about that. It's not what you see.
Yeah.
So we quickly hit it off, and I got,
Well, I was already living here, right?
No. You had just moved, bro. No, sorry. You were living here.
Yeah.
Yeah. You were about to move. Yeah. But we never met though, because you were up.
No, I didn't meet you for a little while.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I was getting a lot better at the sport of CrossFit, learning a lot. Like I had a passion. I was already coaching as well. So I was working at like a Gold's Gym. And I was one of the head personal trainers and actually coaching CrossFit. So I was like coaching, didn't even know what the heck I was doing really. But I had a lot of strength and conditioning background. So
how many hours were you were doing a lot of personal training hours, right?
60 hours, 60 to 70 hours a week. I mean,
just in person.
Every 30 minutes, bro. Every 30 minutes was a new client.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
How did that growth occur? I mean, obviously leads are coming in through the gym, but was some of that even
hustling, bro.
Kind of same thing.
Yeah,
right?
word of mouth. I was like my biggest clientele was, since I played sports in college, a lot of high school kids really wanted to get trained by me because they're just like, "Oh, you did this. Can you help me to do that as well?" And it was cool because that's how my whole coaching career started, was when I was in high school, when I was in Florida. I started working at the YMCA and I started to train these kids, but just skill specific for basketball. So it's like, hey, I'll teach you how to dribble. I'll teach you how to shoot. And then I came back for my freshman year of college at Southeastern, and I had put on like 20 pounds of muscle, not of fat. And the parents were like, hey, can you help my kid to put on muscle as well and get more athletic? And I just saw it as like a business opportunity. I was like, wait, now I can work with more kids outside of basketball. And that's what I started to do. So I was doing that by myself while I was working like odd and end jobs, ended up getting a job at the gym, and I became like one of the head trainers, and I was doing that. So a lot of my clientele was that. I just knew so many people in Lakeland. People wanted to work with me. Once someone got results, somebody hit them up. But yeah, I was coaching literally people from the ages of 12, and I had an old couple that was in their 90s. So, I mean, just a plethora of people. And then I think flash forward like 2 years of me working with you, we both had like talked about our faith a lot and our passion of that. And he was owning the gym, and he was like, I would love for someone to start a ministry in my gym, like a sports ministry. I'm like, bro, I'm your guy.
It was in the sauna.
It wasn't in the sauna. I just moved.
Yeah.
And I'm like, sick, bro. Like,
I think I was just talking about how I had always desired Vital Fitness to be a vessel, right? And I really wanted. I didn't know what it looked like. I was frustrated because I had been going to local pastors, local nonprofits, and saying, I have X amount of cash, I'll give it to you every month, and I have a facility.
Right.
Like, I want to do something.
Right.
And or whatever, I just want to give it to you. And I kept hitting roadblocks. And I was really frustrated. I was like, it's really annoying. Like, I would get responses like, well, there's a lot to think about here, and like things like that. And I'm like, why is this all so hard? Right. Like, I'm literally giving you a building that you can run events in at certain times. Right. And then I'm giving you cash.
Yeah.
And I was like dumbfounded, conversation after conversation. Then I'm telling Connor this, like, I'm just like, dude, this has been so frustrating. And he was like, wait a minute. Like I'll take advantage of that.
Right.
So you can talk a little bit about FCA Fit.
Yeah. So at the time, Jake was like, yeah, this is what I want you to do. So I go home and I tell my wife, and I'm just like, crap, like what do we do with this? Because this is something I would love to do. And I had connections with FCA, which is Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And so I reached out to one of the dudes that worked there. He was high up. I was like, man, this is what we're thinking. Like, we want to offer high-level strength and conditioning to maybe kids who can't afford it, right? And that's our way of, like, sharing the gospel with them, too. Like, we'll talk about Jesus. And he was like, oh, we love this. And, so that's pretty much how FCA Fit was birthed, where we basically would, during the school year, for the last 3 years, that's what I've been doing. During the school year, I go into the school system, become, like, the strength and conditioning coach for some of these teams, and then just introduce them to Jesus and share my story. So literally the story I share, like I'll share that with them throughout the whole season. And Santa Fe, I've been with them now for like 4.5 years, bro, which is crazy. So now the freshmen I started with are now seniors, and some of them obviously have already been in college. And then during the summer, the goal was to bring them into Vital and run like summer clinics and have them come in, and we do like workouts and stuff. And that's what we've done, man. The last 3 years, it's been crazy. Now I have 2 coaches that I've hired on that are going to start doing the same thing. So it's just crazy. It's sick.
Yeah, it was cool that, like, if I could have painted a picture of what I wanted a ministry to look like through Vital Fitness, it would have been that.
Yeah.
You know, let's go help underprivileged kids, like, who can't afford strength conditioning.
Yeah.
And then share the gospel with them.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's a blast.
Yeah. And I'm going to all these other ministries, like, and just thinking, like, I don't know what you want to do. I don't know if you want to literally just do a food service through the gym or what, like, you just use the building.
Yeah.
But it was pretty cool how, I mean, that was all, I mean, that fires me up more than anything.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a huge part of, like, I'm still doing that. It's a huge part of my heart. I love
and
working
now
with,
FCA Fit is becoming, like, how many other I don't know how FCA works, but other people, is anybody else actually doing it?
Yes, yeah.
In Florida?
Yeah, so we actually have an FCA Fit building that someone donated to us. That was an old CrossFit gym. Do you remember, like, Faith Christian? It was, like, not Faith RX. What's the other Faith, like a Christian?
That's the only one I know
CrossFit.
is Faith RX.
Okay, but they're affiliated through Faith RX. Anyway, they donated the building to FCA, and then literally, if you go to Melbourne, Florida right now, there's an FCA Fit gym with our logos.
Sick.
That's pretty
cool. You did not tell me that.
I did tell you that.
No, you told me that they were talking about doing
Oh, no, yeah. And they wanted, remember, they
now
wanted us to move
find
over
out on
there.
this
Yeah.
Holy crap.
But they wanted Tori and I to, like, move over there. And
I knew that.
Yeah. That was
I didn't know they had a building.
Have a building with our logo on it.
You left that part out.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Because and how that started was I actually got to pitch FCA Fit to the whole state of Florida at this, like, huge meeting. So we have people doing it in Sarasota. We have people doing it in South Florida. But the goal is just to continue to grow it. So for me, it was more so my passion was working with athletes. So it's like I didn't have the bandwidth to go and do as much ministry as I want. So it's like that's how now we're growing it, is hiring other coaches. Yeah, it's been crazy, man.
Sauna conversations.
Yeah, sauna conversations.
Yeah.
But, so that same time, so now flashback, I told Jake this proposal. We have this call with Terry, like this 3-way call. I'm actually driving back home from Tennessee because my wife's family was from there. And Jake's like, yeah, cool. I hang up the phone. Jake calls me back. He's like, okay, before you think about doing anything with FCA, I also want to hire you for our business, which it was just his business at the time, Foster Fitness. And I'm like, and again, I just got married, bro. It was like February. No, I don't even remember what time it was, but I got married in March. This was probably like that summer.
It was winter.
Winter, yeah.
That's all I know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Remember.
Maybe it was that December.
Yeah.
So like this whole year, I was just like, what the heck's going on? And anyway, so he calls me and he's like, yeah, like I would love for you to come and work with me. I don't know if you want to elaborate on that.
Yeah, I've told my story before in a previous podcast, so I won't regurgitate anything, but prior to coming to Mayhem, I had my own remote coaching company. It was called Foster Fitness. It was just me coaching people. And eventually we changed the name to Comeback Athlete. Yeah. And I mentioned on the last podcast, like, who I was really passionate about helping was Connor's story. Former athletes who felt like they lost or they wrapped their identity in sports, high school collegiate athletes, typically collegiate athletes. And then sports ended and they felt like they lost their identity. And they still wanted to be healthy, be fit, even be competitive, whether it was in CrossFit or other avenues like, triathlons or something like that. They had these competitive endeavors they wanted to achieve, but they didn't want to sacrifice life's greatest priorities for it. And so I had long story short, I had another guy reach out to me that actually, another coach, a strength and conditioning coach, reached out to me and asked if I would hire him. And I had never thought about hiring anybody. I had thought about it, but I really didn't want to. I was really big on, I don't want to start this whole enterprise. I'm not trying to build out this massive remote coaching company. Yeah. Don't tell God, like, I ain't doing that. Because for me, it was always like, I loved the autonomy of it just being me. Right. And I knew, like, man, you start hiring other people, this is a business now, right? Like, and it's going to come with drama, and it's going to come with more responsibility for me. And I just love flying solo. Long story short, this guy hits me up. My wife and I brought him to Nashville. We had a lot of conversations over dinner and meals. We decided, both him and I, that it wasn't a good fit. But after that weekend, I remember looking at Madeline and just being like, man, that didn't work out how I thought it was going to. And I don't even know how I feel about hiring somebody right now. But if I was going to hire anybody, I'd hire Connor. And she's like, yeah, I like that idea. And then again, I get an idea in my head. Yeah. And I'm like 100 miles an hour. And so it literally was like, you know, Connor, we had this whole thing with ministry that we're starting. And then it was like, and then I really liked the idea. Right. It was probably like the next day that I called Connor. Yeah. Because I don't probably think about
you don't
things
sit on
too
much.
Yeah. I'm like, go now. Yeah.
That's crazy.
So I hit him up and was like, hey man, what you want to come work for me? Yeah. And that was it. I mean, Connor was like, let's do it. And I'll jump in and say like, God blessed us tremendously. I mean, things like, it was like rocket ship.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Growth for both of us. And for Connor in particular. Yeah. And I'll say this like just to like brag on you a little bit. I mean, when you came in, how did you have any remote clients?
So I left Just Move.
Yeah.
And I just brought maybe like
couple people,
5-6 people. Yeah.
So fast forward like a year, I think you and I combined had like 95 clients remotely. Yeah. And things were rocking and rolling.
That was crazy because I made a decision. He has some famous lines, but one of them was, I couldn't be a great coach and a great athlete at the same time. Mm-hmm. And I had to pick one. And I was like, again, I had gone through the whole transition. I played sports in college, and I was just doing CrossFit for fun. I wanted to see how good I could be. And I was like, it wasn't my passion to go and see how good I could be as far as the games level. If that happened, great. But it kind of like fell into my lap perfectly because at the time my wife was doing ministry with Young Life and was getting burnt out. And I was like, man, Tori, if I need to like go and work and you need to take the year off to just like figure out what you want to do, I'll just go hustle and get clients. So like I think at that point I had 15 clients, and in 4 months I went to 40, wow. Which was crazy. Yeah, it was nuts. And I was so overwhelmed at 15, and then that's but it was just like through Sean and through you, like just my efficiency with program went through the roof. In just a short time, and then
systems, right?
Yeah, systems.
I had systems and organization.
Yeah, oh my gosh, yeah. Like I didn't have I wasn't even using my Google Calendar at that point. Yeah. So once I started doing that, I was like, cool, I got this.
That was really it. Like when you came on with me, it wasn't. We didn't have a ton of like, here's how you coach. It was more, here's how you get organized, right? Like here's the
systems.
Yeah, here's how you manage.
I didn't have any of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was programming.
Here's how you use Google Calendar. Here's how we use Calendar to set up consultations and things like that.
Which is nuts, man. I wasn't doing that stuff before. And then flash forward to Jake. So I remember, and Jake remembers this too. He was starting to coach some bigger names, but like on the local level. And he coached Campbell too. And I was like, man, like he had not had anybody that had the aspirations to go into the CrossFit Games. Was like, but Jake, if you had somebody like that, you'd be one of the best CrossFit coaches in the world. But nobody knows about you. And I was like, just one day Mayhem's going to hire you. I remember we like joked about that. Yeah. And anyway, he ends up getting a job with Underdogs, and I'm like, I thought it was going to be Mayhem. I had it. So it's just crazy. Like flash forward now, like we're freaking sitting here. It's just nuts. But it's just like, that's just God's faithfulness. Honestly, it's been so cool. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, sure. Yeah.
I don't remember that story. That's cool.
Yeah. So, any questions?
So you've been with Mayhem now for how many weeks?
2 weeks. Yeah, this year has been like the crazy
kind of a long
transition.
time coming.
Yeah. Because like you were with us even at semifinals. Were you at semifinals?
I was at semifinals.
Yeah, you were at semifinals. Then you were at the games.
I was at the games, Masters,
I remember we're sitting back there with. I guess me and Mike were back there. Foster, all the coaches were back there for the games. And then Connor's back here, and he got a coach's pass somehow. And then all of a sudden, by the end of the weekend, he's coaching like 5 people. Like he's like going out with a team out on the floor. He's like, and I'm like, where did you come from?
Let's not tell that story of how.
Sorry. Edit that out. CrossFit HQ is good.
Yeah, we'll leave that.
But I'm just saying that, like, the few competitions that I've been to where you've been there and you haven't really had anyone that you were going there specifically to coach for. Right. By the end of the weekend, you're coaching more people than anyone else who's there. And it's like, you just get in there and you just start helping people. Yeah. And it's just so cool to see that, like, you just get in there like, who here can I help, can I help you warm up? Like, can I show you, like, can we talk strategy? Right. And then they just latch onto you and you're like, all right, let's do it. Let's go. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, partly it was kind of a long time coming. I always knew Connor would be a part of Mayhem, really day one, where it was like, okay, hey, I get to, be a part of building a team. And there's really 2 parts to it, right? One, previous commitments being made to other coaches, and that's why it took a while. But then 2 is also partly selfish. Like, hey, like Connor's doing great work. Connor's wife, Tori, is a general manager at the gym in Florida, Vital Fitness, that I'm part owner in. And then, Connor's got FCA Fit, right, which is a ministry, he started. And then, but that Madeline and I have been able to be a part of. And then, we had Comeback Athlete. And so it's like, man, he's so invested into other things that I'm a part of. And he's such an asset that for me, it was always like, crap. It's like, it's a win-win having you in, either position. But yeah, there was a little selfishness on my part going like, oh man, I kind of want to keep Connor in my back pocket.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, a year ago, like, I wouldn't have been ready, like, in the sense of like transitioning. Like, if we didn't have Blake or anything, like, I don't know how we would have done it.
There was like, logistical things that had to fall into place, but we always knew you'd be sitting in that chair. So
I did
for sure. Yeah.
So what have the first 2 weeks been like? Like, you have this wealth of experience now.
We're on the phone, like we're on a continuous conversation every day. I mean, it's been great. I mean, it's been cool too because like Sean has done a lot of my mentoring. And I got to hang out with Mike. So I've like I knew everyone already, and like you said, I've been hanging around you guys all year. So it wasn't weird at all. It was like, cool,
it was seamless.
It was,
Like you were on the, like, I wasn't there, I don't think, for the first coaches call that we had. I was out of town that week, but then this past week you're on there, and it was like, he's been here the entire time. It was like, it didn't even,
the same processes and systems we have and expectations for coaches were developed by Connor and I, right? Like a lot of them were. And so I knew it was like Connor's onboarding is kind of a joke.
But not even that, you did like a full like couple weeks up at Mayhem,
I did.
right?
I spent
Where you
2
like
weeks
just
up here this
interned
summer
with Dom, right? And just followed him around.
And that was really like I think that was like what do you call it? Sealed it?
Yeah. Just sealed the deal.
Sealed the deal, thanks. Which was fun because that I got to meet a lot of the athletes as well. So then when I got to the games, I wasn't like, who the heck is this guy? I've already built all these relationships with him for 2 weeks. And I got to hang out with Dom. So it's been cool. Like, I feel like with every coach, I've had like a one-on-one sit down. I feel like this is ours now. So
I also want like to go back because, you left us off almost like with ministry, and then you were doing coaching, and it was just because it just kind of happened.
Right.
Very similar to like my story.
Yeah.
I mean, even yours too, Jake, right? Like, cause you had like this profession that you were going to get into in ministry too. Yeah. And then it just kind of happened, right? Yeah. Coaching and fitness did. At what point did you go, wait a minute, like this is my ministry. Like I'm all in on coaching. Like this is what I want my career to be. When did you know that?
Yeah,
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah. When God kept closing doors to ministry inside the church and kept opening doors into coaching. And I'm the kind of guy, like, again, because of my story, the last 6 years has been so much growth for me. And I knew a lot of my habit was going and chasing the thing that seemed easy, because I was just like, hey, like, this is getting hard now. That's how my life was. Like, it got so chaotic. We got to go and do something else. So when I was just stuck in it for long enough, I was like, okay, every decision I was just praying through so much. Like, I was like obsessed with, like, God, I just want to be in your will. Like, I want to make sure, like, I'm not doing anything outside, because I knew what life was like with that, right, when I was wrapping up in my basketball or that relationship. So for me, it was like really making sure I was inviting people into the decisions I was making, and just like really prayerfully thinking through this. And it was just like piece after piece after piece. And it was just like, awesome, this is what I'm supposed to do. And then the opportunity that I have with clients to talk to them about Jesus, I'm just like, I am pastoring. Like, this is what I'm doing. It just looks a lot different. I'm not standing on a stage. So, yeah.
What's your cliche question, but again, I know you so well, but these are things that I haven't just like flat out asked you. Like, goal as a coach, dream as a coach. Like, where do you want to go with it all?
Yeah, great question. Really here. Yeah, honestly, like this looking back, like,
why here too?
Yeah, because of what we stand for. I mean, I just think it's just an anomaly that we're, at the hierarchy, and we love Jesus, and that's a huge part of what we are, and who we are. And I think end goal for me is, like, my wife and I want to continue to do ministry together and allow my coaching and what I'm doing to, one, like, provide for our family, and be an avenue for me to do ministry to people that probably will never step foot in a church. And I think that's the biggest thing. It's like most of the people that I go and I'm spending time in these high schools and I'm coaching athletes, like they've been to the church and their church hurt and they never want to go back, or they just are totally, have written it off. So it's like, man, this is my avenue to do this and do this well and do it the way I feel like God's calling me to. And, going back to my story, that moment in the car, like God specifically told me, it's like, you're going to use your story to bring people closer to me. I'm like, that's awesome. That's exactly what I'm doing. So that's a lot of what I want my coaching to be. Is I tell my athletes this a lot. And I mean, this is the whole thing of man performance. It's like coaching the whole person, because I care way more about who they're going to be as an athlete. Like, are they going to make it to the games? Of course I care about that, but I care more about like, what kind of father are they? What kind of husband are they? How are they managing their relationships and their work-life balance? Like, that's what matters at the end of the day. And that will make them become a better athlete. And that's how we can help somebody compete freely, is by helping them to understand that.
Training won't fix your life.
Yeah, training won't fix your life, man.
But improving your life will, fixing your life will improve your training.
100%. Yeah.
Credit Sean for that one.
Yeah, I think the reason why it entices people to wrap their identity into it is because it gives you a pseudo effect. Like, you go and compete and you win, or you crush a workout and you beat people, and it gives you that sense of like, oh, like this is sick, and you get obsessed with that feeling, and then that's why people get so burnt out, is because they're just like, now I'm not winning, I'm not doing what I should be doing, I don't do as good as I can in a qualifier, and now like who the heck am I? And that's the point. It's like, hey, like you were talking about this in the car today. It's like, why did you even start this? Right? That you start this because you're passionate about it. You want to compete. But like at the end of the day, like that can't be who you are, because it's going to come a day where it's like you have a bad workout. You're not going to come first. And you're just going to be like, if you're wrapping your identity in that, you're going to be like, who the heck am I? So, yeah.
It's like the C.S. Lewis, never let your happiness rest in something you may lose.
Exactly. Right? Yeah. Good.
It's fleeting.
Yeah. So fleeting.
No, that's a great story. That's awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I don't have anything else.
I was kind of waiting for you to ask another question.
You answered all of them. So,
really
that's
the best.
Really
cool. I think
yeah.
just one last thing would be, at the very beginning, I started off with saying like, you've already communicated what your gift is.
Yeah.
And kind of what your niche is, so to speak, in your story.
Yeah.
Which is like what you felt like God called you to do, which is to use your story as a tool.
Yeah.
But yeah, just I guess to summarize that a little bit more, like what do you think is? It almost sounds like an interview question. It's kind of lame, but I want to hear that from you. Yeah. Like, what do you feel like is something that's unique that you bring to the table as a coach in competitive CrossFit that's a little different from everybody else?
Is an interview question, because he asked me that same question on our interview.
Okay,
really?
yeah.
That's a great question.
I, for sure, because of the impact my story has had on my life, and it's like even the negative points of it, right, and how it's come out into my marriage and all of the work I have done up until this point, I've realized, man, like diving into that is so significant for me, and having a lot of education around that. So like a lot of my education is through the Allender Center. So shout out to like Dan Allender, if you guys know who that is. But it's part of the Seattle School of Psychology and Theology. And all of his stuff talks about like returning to how God intended us to be, right? Which is like returning back to the garden, right? Before we clothed ourselves and wrapped ourselves up with shame and hurt and all this. So it's like, if we can return back to that, even as athletes, like, man, how much more free can we be? Because like, think about how much that weighs us down metaphorically. So as a coach, like that's what I want to bring in to this team, is like really helping us to see like, hey, this could be way more than just, they're not getting to sleep because, they're drinking water 90 minutes, or they're not drinking water 90 minutes before they go to sleep or something like that. I just think a lot of the times people suppress so much of who they are because it will come out in a shameful way, or they feel shame about it, or whatever the case might be. So it's like, I want our coaching staff to create a safe place. And Ingo was just sharing this for our clients to open up and be like, hey, like this is what I'm struggling with. It's not ring muscle ups. It's, I don't know what to do with my stress at the end of the day. So yeah.
Or not even, they don't know what to do with their stress at the end of the day. They don't know how to process stress.
They don't even know their stress.
They don't have categorical frameworks in which
Yeah.
to be able to come to an understanding in which like that may be the Lord trying to teach you something,
100%.
right? Or like that may be something that the Lord's trying to reveal in you,
Right,
right? For you to give to Him,
Right.
and like, yeah, I just love that about
Yeah.
what we get to do, like
Yeah.
the team that Foster's put together, and then obviously just the company that Rich has created, that just allows us to be. Like I was talking with Dom about it. He was like, it's not just one of those things where we work for a company where like if we're talking to someone about the gospel or something like that, they're kind of like, hey dude, like tone it down just a notch. You know, it's like, no, if you're not having those conversations, like what are you doing?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Like that's,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'm just unbelievably grateful for that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Maybe we can end off here. Like one of my favorite books, is How People Grow by Henry Cloud. And his first ingredient for growth, like starts from awareness. But like that awareness can only come from like sometimes like an ego death. Like, so you think about addicts that like, you know, they're overdosing and they almost die. And then they wake up like, I got to change my life. So it's like, obviously we're not working with addicts. Maybe some of our athletes have had that history or past. We don't even know it, but it's like, hey, if we can help them to see the awareness of their stress or their unhealthy habits or whatever the case is, it's like, man, that is where we can say, hey, like, this is where you can bring in Jesus into those moments because He's really the only person that's going to make you feel whole again. So
I think part of the freeing part of that too as a coach, when you think, because immediately some of the thoughts that go into my head is like, I'm not equipped to do that.
Right. Right.
But when you say awareness, I can do that.
Yeah.
It's like you can help bring awareness to people.
Right.
Yep.
And that's the thing too with us. Like we've always said, we stay in our lane.
Yeah.
Right. Like
Exactly.
we're not
doctors.
therapists. Yeah. We're not doctors.
Sean
we're not
is.
we're not physical therapists. Right. Like we don't heal people. Like,
right.
you know, but awareness, I think that's a great.
Yeah. If we can point people to where the healing can happen.
Yes. Yeah.
That's what we're doing. It's like, hey, like we have a good knowledge of all these areas. So it's like, hey, if your knee is hurting, you probably need to go do this, right? Or go ask someone this question.
I mean, shoot, that's even what we do in program design. We're not making, we're just pointing,
yeah.
Hey, I'm making you aware you have this particular deficiency and here's a plan.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
That was a perfect bow tie.
Cool.
Connor, thanks, man.
Of course.
Excited to have you. Love you.
Love you guys too.
That was Mayhem Performance Podcast.
27.
Yeah. Number 9-ish, 8-ish, 9.
Something like that.
See you next time.
Until next time.
Double digits coming soon.